Hey guys, today I'm going to be showing you how I added entities into my game. So the first thing I had to understand was that I needed to split the game objects and entities. They could be in the same game object vector, but the entities wouldn't be updated the same way game objects are. The issue I had with this was dynamic casting inside of a for loop, the same way I would update any game object. But when I tried that out, I would get the same issues about reading a pointer. So I tried to use AI, but it gave me the same issue. To solve this issue, I needed to put the entities inside of their own unordered map. Plus, when I use an unordered map, I can also include the integers 64 bits inside of that map to give them their own IDs. The IDs are then set by the instance holder inside of the scene, which contains an ID counter and a get ID increment to increase the total ID count. Now that we have a way to identify entities, not just by their pointer values, but instead by a unique identifier, I took this further by adding it to GameObjects. I haven't done anything specific with the GameObjects yet, but I plan to do so in the future. Now that we have GameObjects and entities split, this fixed a big issue that even I wasn't aware of. Entities were never updating inside of the scene. Now that clearly is a big issue. To solve this, I had to update entities from the unordered map I just created. First, I checked if their object ID is equivalent to their holder ID. Next, I create a bool to check if their health is less than 0, and if it is, I erase them from the entities holder. Otherwise, I update and I move on to the next entity. And finally, now that entities are actually updating, I can now see them attacking. Now hold on, I never went over them attacking. Yes, these entities can shoot projectiles. It was similar to how you do it in any other engine or game. You would just first create the entity, give it any details you want. Just make sure the force fire is true, and you save it to the entity data. Next, you're going to create a projectile. This is similar across all games. All you're going to have to do is set its type, its velocity, and start the decay sequence. Then, as with everything else, add it to the scene. Now that we have a way to update entities and to give them a form of attack, let me get more specific to you with what's going on. For this to work properly, I had to add a destroy and onDestroy function for all game objects. This works because every game object sets its own lifespan and end of life on spawn at 0 and 1, creating a permanent offset between two values. Next, we have to constantly add both the lifespan and the end of life at the same time so they never reach each other. And once they do reach each other, that's when we activate the destroy function. It will automatically confirm that the object is dead and then run the onDestroy function, which can be virtual for any object, and remove the object from the scene. Now that was a lot of information about adding entities into the game, but that's how it works and it functions. So let me go over what the other thing I did was global instances. Now, one thing I was noticing was that with every function I made, I had to constantly send the scene manager and the scene data over to the game objects. This was very annoying. This whole time, I should have had the scene manager and any other instances just globalized and accessible to any script. Now that I realized that, I went and got to work. Whenever you want to globalize an object, you have to make the constructor private, so that way it's not instantiated by any other script. Then for any public functions or operators, you want to make sure that it is not copied by anything, so that way there's one at all times. And finally, you want to create a static getInstance function to return the instance that is already made. Now, once I added this stuff, oh my god, did I use it everywhere. I did it for the asset manager, the developer window, the UI engine, and then later on, I'm gonna think about doing it for the physics system. Now, out of everything I've already mentioned, there's only one thing I missed out on. I gave the player a laser. Now, this was easier to implement than I thought, but what got me was the rays. So what's going on here is that I need to create a ray from the camera position, which is the player head, and then cast it at the forward direction of the camera, which is all updated inside the update camera loop. Next, I have to look over all game objects and check if anything collides with the ray. Then, if something does collide with the ray and it is an entity, we're gonna output a base damage and take the damage off of the entity. Otherwise, we show proof that it did hit by adding force to the object. And that's everything I've added to my game in this past week. Thank you for watching.